All right, we're live. So, Neil and Stacy, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Receiving.
Great. And you, Neil?
Yep, no, good. Thanks,
Great,
Fraser.
and I can hear you just fine, so that's a good start. Okay, so yeah, people should start arriving in the room in about a minute. In fact, we've got 8 people just joined us now, so that's good. So we'll just give everyone a moment to arrive in the room. Just introduce myself. I'm Fraser May. I'm the Communications and Advocacy Manager for Civil Contractors New Zealand. And here with me today, I have Stacy Goldsworthy, who's our Technical Manager at CCNZ. Hi, Stacy. And Neil Walker.
Afternoon, all.
Thanks. And Neil Walker, who's the National Manager for Maintenance and Operations from Waka, Kotahi, NZTA. Hi, Neil.
Yeah. Hi, afternoon, everyone.
Great. Yeah, we'll just give everyone a few moments to arrive in the room, and then we'll get on with it. This is going to be a pretty quick fire session today, so we don't plan on taking much more than half an hour. It's a bit of an initial dialogue, I suppose, and just to let everyone know what's happening in the NOC review, or the Network Outcomes Contracts review. So people can figure out if they can be part of it, and people also have the chance to give the feedback that they need to give. So yeah, just hold on for another half minute, and then I will hand over to my co-presenters. Another little bit of housekeeping. There is a chat function in this webinar, so if you'd like to ask us any questions during the event, there is a chat function on the right-hand side there. If you just click those 2 little speech bubbles, then you'll be able to ask us any questions, and you know, we may have some time to answer those at the end of the webinar, and go through that. Great. Okay. So time to kick on, I think. So welcome everyone to today's webinar on the Network Outcomes Contracts Review. I'm here from Civil Contractors New Zealand, as I said before, Fraser May, Communications and Advocacy Manager. And just to give you a bit of context, actually, CCNZ was formed when Roading New Zealand and the Contractors Federation merged, and Roading New Zealand played a really significant role in the creation of the NOC contracts from an industry point of view, and I think the Contractors Federation had a good amount of say on that as well. So we're not taking as direct a hand in the review this time. Really, our role in this one is to make sure people are aware of what's going on and to facilitate a bit of discussion. Waka Kotahi is calling for people to speak with them directly about any changes they'd like to see, any improvements. They're really looking for how they can make the NOC contracts work as well as they possibly can. So that's what this consultation is all about. Right, I'm going to hand over to my co-presenter here, Stacy Goldsworthy, Technical Manager from Civil Contractors New Zealand. And Stacy's just going to say a few words about the NOCs and what they mean from a contractor perspective. So if you mind taking it away, please go ahead, Stacy.
Thank you, Fraser. Good afternoon, all. Yeah, so the NOCs were started, well, the first NOC was awarded back just before Christmas in 2013. So the NOCs have been ongoing now for 9 years, and Waka Kotahi have reached out to civil contractors and enables us to reach out to our membership just to review how the NOCs are going. So yeah, CCNZ, we'd like to work collaboratively with Waka Kotahi in matters such as these. And I suppose to quote a person that most of us, or quite a few of us, do know, I'm on the Pavements Delivery Steering Group, and as one of the Workstreams is is devoted to looking at industry capability and how we need to upskill people, and that's across the sector. There's something there for everybody, and in that workstream we've been working with Mike Mannion, who now works for Waka Kotahi, and one quote that he put forward was, "We do it better together," and I think those that operate in a collaborative way do see that as a much better outcome. So with the NOCs, typically they've had a lead contract. We're just discussing before, there's about 3 that run an alliance type model. Typically there is a lead contractor, and then through supply chain and through subcontract agreements, those contractors engage other people, other organisations, and as we're just having a discussion before coming on air, there is a community that's sort of supported by the work that's undertaken in this space. Some of the feedback to date from contractors is let's not throw the NOC model out. There's been a lot of time and effort and maybe some angst about how the models work, but there's something that the industry is now quite familiar with, and there's refinements that we can make, and that's the purpose of this webinar is to get feedback from those that do engage or wish to engage, and improve how we do things. So as I said at the start, this is a collaborative exercise that's been initiated by Waka and something that CCNZ supports. So I'll just hand over back to you, Fraser, or to you, Neil.
Yeah, great. Well, all I really need to do at this point is remind people there's a chat function on the right-hand side there. So if you do any burning questions, let us know. We try and get to it. If we can't, then we'll see if we can follow up after. And over to Neil Walker, who's the National Manager of Maintenance and Operations from Kotahi NZTA. Now, Neil's been with Transport Agency for 11 years, and he's been involved with network performance throughout that time, prior to the NOC contracts beginning, but also all the way through them. And now he's really looking at how they can improve and reach the next stage. So you're probably better placed to talk about that work than I am, Neil. So I'm going to hand over to you. I'm just going to move on to the next slide, and then the show's all yours.
Thanks, Fraser. Afternoon, everybody. Look, I thought maybe just to kick things off, I thought I'd give you a bit of perspective as to why we're actually undertaking the NOC review. As Stacy sort of mentioned before, I think he sort of talked about 2013 was when the first contracts sort of were kicking off. So it's been almost a decade, and there's quite a lot's changed over that last decade. And so we've got about, I think it's somewhere in the order of about 14 or 15 contracts due to expire over the next 3 years. So we went to the board and said we wouldn't mind a bit of time to actually go and do a bit of a reflection on whether we got these things geared right for the future. So I thought I might take you through a bit of a this is how we're thinking about it. These are sort of the questions we're asking. These are things which we think are working well. Some of the feedback around where areas we know we've got to make some improvements and so forth. But the objective of this thing is really just thinking about we're not jumping to a solution at the moment. We're just trying to keep an open mind as to what's working, what's not working, and then we're going to take that later on and think about it. So what does that mean for the NOCs into the future? So I suppose the first point is we're definitely outsourced. In the maintenance and operations area, we've probably got a best part of about 100 people that are involved, network managers and contract managers, and a few technical specialists that are involved in with the NOCs. But the majority of the work, obviously, it's outsourced, and it's outsourced to some. So it's quite a well-established contracting environment that we work in. There's some things that work really well. So I've been checking the weather today, because we've got lots of events happening around the country. That's where the NOCs have been pretty outstanding. I think that world class actually is when anything goes wrong. We've got a really reliable group of people that are out there clearing slips, dealing with flooding, doing all of that sort of work. And so we've got quite a good reputation around when things go well. When the NOCs are first introduced, they were introduced for a reason. At the time, we had a lot of work going on. It's a bit like today, actually, but a lot of work going on, a lot of aspirations around what we wanted to do around building new roads and so forth, but not quite the amount of money to actually go and deliver on all of that. So there was quite a bit of attention put onto the maintenance area around trying to get more value out of the network. And I think in the first NLTP period, so the first 3 years of back in when we first set the contracts up, we had to find somewhere in the order of about $160 million of savings out of the maintenance contract, and it was generally, though, the contracts were flatlined. And it's only been in recent times that we've actually been able to get some extra money back into the maintenance area. So what you've seen is the network has degraded over time, deliberately in some parts of the country. But that's, we're sort of, it means we're in a bit of catch-up mode now, going and trying to get some, restore some of the network condition that we've degraded over the last decade. The NOC contracts, they're big contracts. Just to give you an idea of scale, the state highway maintenance activity class is $2.8 billion over 3 years. There's a bit of internal stuff that we have in there, the running of our operations centres and so forth, but the majority of that money is going to the NOCs at the moment. And the point I always make about that is, that investment goes into making sure that the roads are safe, open, etc. But the other point, they actually feed a lot of families as well, that $2.8 billion, which we're aware of. And there's a significant chunk of that work is the renewals work, which is we've got extra money. This in our TV period has been about an extra $400 million assigned to the NOCs. But we're finding, actually, just with the way that the current environment is around the impact COVID's had on the industry and so forth, we're actually finding it difficult to actually deliver to a program which is much bigger than what it has been over the last couple of years. Just as I was mentioning, so we know this year, I think last year we delivered something like in the renewals program, I think it was in the order of about 1,800 lane kilometres. This year we've delivered around 2,200 lane kilometres, so it's definitely a step up in the amount of work we're doing. We're talking about that going up again next year to around 2,600 lane kilometres. And what we're finding is actually that's really, really challenging on making sure we've got all the resources in place to be able to do that. The other concern we've got, which you'll all be aware of, is all of the supply input costs are actually going up. So that's going to have an impact on actually how much we can get done. And as I said, we're sort of in catch-up mode. So we are trying to go as fast as we can to get as much as possibly as we can, but we're trying to also be sensible about what the industry can actually handle. We know, reflecting back over the last 10 years, probably in the last couple of years, we have experienced quite a bit of rework out in the network. So, and we think there's a number of reasons behind that. Partly because just the general state of the condition of the state highway network in some areas, not all areas. But also just around some of the workmanship that's actually we're seeing out in the network. So we're having a good look at that with the contractors, current NOC contractors, and trying to get behind and understand what's behind that. And then we've got a whole lot of other stuff coming at us currently at the moment, particularly around the likes of climate change. We've got technology which is starting to show up in the network now, which we having to learn how to work our way around. And then we've also we're not just thinking about trucks and cars on the roads anymore. There's definitely a big push for the mode shift, so that's forcing us to take more of a corridor approach to how we actually manage and maintain the network. Go back to that context, which is actually, so we know all of this stuff's coming at us. We know we're in a sort of an unusual environment at the moment. We think this uncertainty around, what's going to happen as a result of COVID and the supply chain costs and, conflict overseas, all of that's going to have an impact on us and created quite a bit of uncertainty over the next few years. So we're taking all of that into consideration while we can, given that we know that we've got these contracts that are all due to start rolling over. And the big question is would we change much? And as I said right at the very beginning, we're trying to maintain some discipline around. We don't actually want to jump to the solutions. We want to make sure we've got all of the information that we need to be able to make some sensible decisions around what the future might look for the NOCs. And just on that future needs stuff, some of it we just don't have the detail for at the moment. So there's a lot of questions around what's carbon reduction going to mean for the NOCs, how we undertake the work, and the environmental sustainability stuff, which is how do we do the work, leaving less of a carbon footprint when we do the work. We know that our contractors are investing in a lot of technology at the moment, so the use of AI to go and actually to monitor what's actually happening out on the roads, in systems that they're willing to invest in. But there's also other, we're looking for other opportunities where you could use technology to make things maybe more efficient or effective for us. And I sort of mentioned before around the mode shift stuff. So not only do we need to be focusing on looking after the seal on the roads, but we're going to start thinking more around cycle paths, footpaths, etc. And one thing which never goes away, which is why we're really pleased to have some extra money for the maintenance and operations work at the moment. We do know that there's going to be future pressure on funding. So the big focus for us is going to have to be able to demonstrate actually we're getting good value for money for the contracts going forward. And that's mainly to provide others confidence that actually the work's being done as efficiently as it can. So the process that we're following is we've asked the board to give us some, to allow us to make some time to actually go through and do the full review. And what we've committed to is that we're going to have that completed where we think we want to go by the end of this calendar year. So, and we've broken it up into a couple of chunks. So the first one, which was what we're doing right now, and we're basically closing it up now, which is the current state assessment. And that current state assessment is basically going out and doing a whole lot of interviews. We've got some work streams that we're working on internally in the agency to just evaluate how things have gone over the last decade and where we think the areas for improvement, etc. are. And we're also going out and talking to other authorities around the world around different models, contracting models that they're using at the moment. And the idea is to collate all of that so that when we go into our next phase, which is the design phase, which we've got to do between now and Christmas, is to say, okay, well, what does that actually mean for a contracting model going forward? And I can honestly say that we don't have a view at the moment on that. It's hard to actually not start wanting to solve on the fly, but we're actually trying to keep a discipline, which actually we're going to do all of that that next step starting in August. And then the result of that is to come up with a procurement strategy, which would be looking at sometime in the new year. And implementation currently at the moment is that we're thinking 2014. And to enable us to actually to get the space, we've got this thing what we call the enabling project, which is we had about half a dozen contracts where we've gone and looked to extend those contracts out to 2024. And the reason why we want to try and do that is so that we don't extend them too far, so that we can, if we're going to get a procurement strategy together, then we've got something we can go and try and implement, not too far off. We are doing, and we've got a number of work streams underway at the moment. So we're doing a review around overall contractor performance. So one of the benefits of the current NOC contracts is we do have quite a bit of reporting in place. Some people tell us we've actually got too much at the moment. But we do quite a bit of benchmarking around the contracts and how they're going and so forth. So we're using all of that information to sort of have a look at where we think we've got known areas that we want to make some improvements around. I mentioned before we're doing a supplier market assessment, so we are talking to a lot of different stakeholders at the moment. We've talked to a lot of contractors, a lot of tier ones and a lot of tier two contractors. And just trying to get perspectives on what's working and not working there. And we're also, as I was saying before, we're actually talking to a few different authorities around the world around different models that they're currently using at the moment, and why they went there is what we're asking questions about. As I was saying before, there's really two parts to these contracts, the way I think about them anyway. One is around the responsive stuff, which these contracts work really, really well on. The other part is the planning around the annual renewals programming, and we do. And to give you a feel for how it feels within Waka Kotahi, we spend all of our time on that second one around the planning process. Part of it is because we've probably made it a bit complicated ourselves around how we do that, but actually it sucks up a lot of time every year for us, and it takes up a huge amount of focus. So we've got some questions around, have we actually got that planning process working as well as what it could be? I talked before a bit about the adaptability stuff, which is, the likes of the climate change, mode shift, and all that sort of stuff. So we've done a bit of work around questions that we need to make sure that whatever we decide for in the future, where we've got uncertainty, that actually we've got some flexibility in the contracts to be able to adapt to stuff as it gets a bit more firmed up. And then there's this communications piece, which is actually, it's part of this too, by the way, which is about just letting everybody know what we're up to, because we're really open for feedback and we want to be transparent around the process that we're working through. So we've got a couple of options for people if they want to provide feedback. So some of the feedback we've had from some of the tier 2 contractors is really difficult to talk to us at the moment if you don't have a NOC contract. So we're open for talking to people. So there's a couple of options. One is you can use the email address, which you see in front of you there. That's and you can send your thoughts and so forth back to us. But if anybody was out there was really keen to have a discussion with us, we're also up for that. So Fraser, I think that's about it from now. That's all I was going to share, but I'm happy to answer any questions people may have.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Neil. Look, I think it's good to get a bit of an overview of where you're looking. I mean, I guess I have. I'll voice a couple of questions, and if anyone else wants to ask them, we've got some coming through the chat function on the right-hand side already, but if anyone else wants to ask, please do. Some of the thoughts I have, well, I guess, what's open for discussion and what's on the table. You said everything. I mean, are you going right to the extent of sort of geographic spread of the NOCs and the path forward for that? How is it a fine-tuning, or is it a complete remake, or haven't you kind of got an answer for that just yet because you're leaving it open?
No, so yeah, like as I said, we're trying to purposely keep our mind open to it, but we have had a lot of feedback around, like, for example, around the size of the NOCs at the moment. I mean, there's been a lot of feedback which actually they think, the feeling is that they're actually sized about the right size currently at the moment. Look, it's a bit too early to say, we were up for a lot of change. They have been reasonably successful, these NOCs, by the way. So, but there's some stuff that we're sort of questioning around, how do we actually improve on it. So, yeah, that's the next phase, to be honest, Fraser. We're just trying to stop ourselves from going there until we get this current assessment work done. Yeah,
that's great. So I guess, and just before I get to some more questions, I mean, obviously, few different parties involved, head contractors, subbies and suppliers. So, are you looking to hear about kind of the pathways for people to build what they do in that space, or to build their businesses to work in those spaces, or what sort of balance are you looking for there, considering it?
Well, one of the questions I suppose we're asking people is that there is a clause under the current NOC contracts, which is, around they've got to have a certain amount of subcontractors, local subcontractors engaged. So we're really interested in what people think. I think one of the original intents was to try and grow the market. And so, that's what we're having a look at the moment. Do we think it's actually growing or not? But we're actually up for people making suggestions around, what we might be thinking in the way of subcontracting, what we should be allowing for in the contracts. I don't know if that answers your question or not. No,
that's fine. All right. Well, I'm getting some more coming through, so that's great. Just verbalise a few of those questions that are coming through. Some of them might be a bit direct, but that's great. Hopefully, we can get some good answers. So, do you think you're getting your money's worth on the NOC contracts and with the quality of products used? It's a question that's asked. I guess, it probably depends. But I'll let you answer.
Well, if you've got rework, I suppose the question is if you've got rework in the network. And look, there's different views on how the rework shows up. Some of it has been talked a bit about, have we got the right quality checks in place? Some of it is around, have we got, people with the right skills doing the work? Are we following, the right processes and so forth? There's a bit of that out there, which is sort of a question mark to me. So, if you've got rework, I mean, the answer is, there's obviously room for improvement.
Yeah, another question we got was around perhaps historic, like the question's phrased, why did you intentionally let the network degrade? But I guess, is that something you'd be prepared to answer there?
Oh, no, I think the view back in, when the contracts were initially set up, which was that we had sort of birthday resales and so forth. So the question really was, if you're going to try and benefit from trying to reduce the amount of work in the network to match the budget, because that's really the challenge that we had of us. So how do you go about it? So some of that was trying to remove some of the renewals work, which was, which maybe could have hung out for another year or two and so forth. So, and it's been a focus of us to try and get as much as we can out of the network over the last decade. So was it intentionally? Probably the words intentionally, degrade the network. I think there was more intent around actually, depending on the classifications of the network, we were trying to tighten up our investment where we would spend money, which was only the money that we had available to us. So there was a number of things that that had been the focus in the past. So some of that was around what's the right treatments for the certain different types of network out there. The thing that's been challenging for us all, though, and probably everyone on this call will appreciate that, wherever you run trucks in New Zealand, they have a massive impact on the network. And actually, there's a couple of things that have happened. So we've been highly successful around the number of trucks that are actually out on the network transporting goods at the moment. The likes of HPMV and 50 Max has seen more of those vehicles on the road than we anticipated. So it's been a challenge really, which is restricted funding over the years and actually a hell of a lot of extra demand on the network. So that's all behind why we're at the stage we are with the current network condition.
Thanks for that. That's glad you answered that. So I guess another question here, given the pressure on funding and the rumours of recession, how Waka considering other financial models that may be able to support the intended outcomes you're looking to achieve?
Yeah, well, there's some work going on with this at the moment between the South and MOT and Treasury, but it's right out of my area of knowledge. Sorry. So but look, I know there are questions being asked currently at the moment, which is around that area.
Yeah, we're getting some specific feedback about reporting and a few other things there. Just the intention here is basically to keep it a quick lunch break session. So I think the email address there I think would be just before we get too in depth. I think that email address at Waka are basically setting up interviews for people that are keen to give their perspective. So I'd suggest that anyone that's very keen to have a direct conversation with Waka should email that. CCNZ is very happy to help out in terms of anonymous feedback as well. If you'd like your name not to be attached to it, you're very welcome to contact us directly, and then we can convey some more anonymous feedback. But I think what Waka has said is they are looking to keep an open mind with the feedback they receive around this. So I'd suggest that either of those is fine. That's just before we get into any more questions there. Got about 2 minutes left. So just fire another detailed question at you if I could, Wayne. How do you feel about the high-speed data collected for Scrim is currently used to determine skid deficient sites on the state highway network? This is only a snapshot. Is there any thought about giving contractors the task and the payment to address this throughout the year and using Scrim to pick up the outliers?
Yeah. It's almost like a leading question, isn't it? Look, there's something, and I think there was another one around the risk transfer to the contractor as well. I think that's they're similar questions for me. So one of the questions I suppose we've got is actually, have we got the risk actually allocated correctly at the moment? And are we allowing the contractors to innovate? Because we use that word a hell of a lot, but it's actually, in my mind, is what do the contractors feel empowered both commercially and also the ability to be able to actually go and do stuff where they think it's smarter for us to get better outcomes in the network. That's the sort of thing that we want to explore under the new model, which is what truly incents the contractors to be able to add value without it getting all tied up in commercial stuff. So I don't know if it sort of answers your question or not.
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Neil. That's quite a specific question, but I think, thanks very much for taking the time to answer it. Look, I think, our intention was to make this a quick lunch session. I think there is more follow-up, and obviously Waka Kotahi will be following up more on the interviews and the discussion through the NOC review. The email address there on screen, nocreview@nzta.gov.nz, is the way to ask these questions or raise these points. If you'd like to raise anonymous feedback or to contact CCNZ directly, then you're welcome to contact me. My email is fraser@civilcontractors.co.nz. I've put my email in the chat function there. So I can see there's a few more questions coming through. You're very welcome to just put some in the chat function as well, and we'll put them through to Waka Kotahi for you as well. So otherwise, though, look, Neil, I just want to thank you for taking the time to be put on the spot and have a bit of a chat. Let us know what's going on with the NOC review, and to make sure that those that need to be involved are involved. So that's really thanks from us, and everyone else will send a recording through, and we'll look forward to the next stage of the NOC review. Anything else you'd like to add as a final note, Neil?
No, just thanks for people's time to jump onto your webinar. So, yep.
All right. Thanks very much, everyone, and you have a good rest of the day.